Okay, that's the camera there, Mike. Okay, so we are live for this Q&A with Councillor Mike Goodman, who is the Cabinet Member for the Environment and Infrastructure, is that right?
Environment, Planning and Transport.
That's it. Oh, it changed recently, didn't it? The name changed recently. So I just want to do a little bit of digital housekeeping before we get underway. The first thing is the tech used for this live stream is very high tech, and it's not perfect. It can go down. So if that does happen, just refresh your page and you should get us back. If it goes down at this end, it can take me a minute or two to re-establish the feed. So just be patient, refresh your page. We'll be right back with you. Questions for this evening should be about countryside management and parking charges. Anything else we'll have to deal with at a later date. But that's what people want to talk about, and that's what this live Q&A is about. In the nicest possible way, please be civil, because any rude or abusive comments won't be answered. Let me just turn this down. That's it. We've had quite a few questions in advance. What we'll try and do is answer some of those first, just to let this thing get going, and then any questions that come in live, we'll answer those, and we'll mix it up a little bit with live questions and questions that we've had in advance. Mike wanted me to share with you a Q&A page, which I will put in the comments in a moment, and also consultation. Again, I'll share those links in the comments in a minute. Now, if you have got any questions, now's the time to put them in the comments, and we'll get Mike Goodman here to answer them for you. Now, so let's have a look. Let me just have a look at the stream here, see if there's any comments that have come in yet. Can't see any yet on the live stream. So we'll start with a question from, you had two questions from John Powell, didn't you? You just sent me them. Let's have a look at them. Question one. How many planning applications for commercial activities in Surrey countryside locations are in the pipeline as we speak? A numerical answer, please.
As far as I'm aware, zero. I'm not aware of any currently that have been planned.
Right, so that's a zero, John. And there was another question he's got. How many people have been blocked, muted, or otherwise screened out of this proposed Q&A session? A numerical answer, please. Well, I'll answer that, John, because I'm the one that's facilitating the live stream. And since we decided to do this live stream, I've not blocked a single person from the Residents Network. So, in fact, it's been several months since I've blocked anyone from the Residents Network. So the answer is zero. That said, if there's anybody who wants to watch this that has been blocked previously, then perhaps they won't be able to see it because they'll be blocked. But none that I'm aware of in the last couple of months. So that's John out of the way. We've got a couple here. Let's have a look. Now, Gillian Scarrett-Jones has asked quite a lot of questions. I'll mix hers up. So, Gillian, if you're watching live, I'm not going to read them all at once. We'll spread it out over the Q&A. But your first question is asking why a loan was taken out to fund this non-essential work. People are sleeping in the streets, more people than ever using food banks. Surrey County Council finances in ruins. Need I go on? It's disgusting. He has so far refused to give the particulars of this loan.
Yes, I can answer that quite clearly. What we do, we have what we call Investor Save. And the investment board look at various opportunities where we put investment in from county money and then we get a return on it. And what we did with the countryside car parks, we borrowed from the county 330,000, of which will be paid back over the 15 years of the loan. It won't actually cost county any money at all. They just loan us the money, which we pay on average about 4% interest on that money.
Right, you are. Okay, so that's the first one from Sally answered. There's one coming anonymous. Can you tell us what the capital investment has been made, and a breakdown in cost would be appreciated?
Well, if I can refer you back to the Cabinet paper of January this year, when it's about £330,000 that we're spending on capital for the countryside car park. We still have not spent all that money. We're still waiting for a couple of bills to come in. We anticipate spending very close to that amount of money, and that was what was in the budget. But the actual breakdown, I cannot recall exactly how much the meters cost or the signage, but the total amount we can spend is 330,000.
Right, now if you're watching this live and you have friends, colleagues, neighbours, fellow members of the community that you think might be interested in this, please hit that share button so that they can see that. If you're watching via the Resonance Network that's been shared, it might not show very well on groups, so you might want to watch directly from the Resonance Network page. I mean, we've got quite a few people watching live, but I can't see any comments or questions that have come in live. So if you have got any questions, please put them in the comments there, and Mike here will answer them for
Absolutely.
you. All right, and anything, you can ask him anything you want about countryside management or parking. We're not going to filter any of the questions. Whatever you want, anything goes, so long as you're polite. So let's ask another question from Sally Kipping again. Why are you penalising people who want to keep fit and enjoy the fresh air and countryside? And I've got to say, Mike, that's a question I get a lot on my own Facebook page from residents who feel that they're being penalised. So go ahead.
Okay, well, look, what we need to do with the countryside is to keep it open, keep access open for all people to use. And without this sort of money that's coming in with the car parking charges, we will struggle to actually keep some of those rights of way, etc. open. So therefore we need this money to protect the countryside into perpetuity. We do not want to penalise people. We believe that it is right that people come into the countryside and enjoy it. And I'll bring in one thing early now, as we haven't got many questions coming in.
Yeah.
One of the things I did launch about 3 or 4 weeks ago now is a countryside consultation. This consultation, and the details will follow later on, is a consultation for the people, the residents, to say to us what are their priorities for the countryside. Because we've decided in the past, Surrey Wildlife Trust and Surrey County Council, what the priorities were on how we spent the money. I thought it was important to hear from the public how that money should be spent and how we should actually finance the countryside. These are really challenging times, but I can tell you tonight, and I've said this many times, what matters to me is protecting and improving our beautiful countryside, the wildlife, the animals, into perpetuity, and I think that's absolutely essential. So I don't want to stop anybody going onto the countryside.
Okay, good enough. Thanks for that, Mike. Again, if you're watching live, please do share the live stream to your own timelines or any groups, local groups that you might belong to. I've just shared it to Camberley Chat and Save Newlands Corner Facebook group. And as we're going through this, I'll try and share it to some other pages. But if you're watching live, you please do that too. I can't see any questions that have come in live yet. So please, we're doing this so that to answer your questions, if you do have any questions at all about countryside management and car parking charges, please do put them in the comments. And I must try and remember to save this to the Children's Society page as well, because I know that they're interested in this stuff. So, next question, let's have a look. Okay, this is a good question. Why can't the council continue to pay for the countryside as they have done for years?
That is an excellent question. If I can try to explain, in 2011 we used to put something in the region of £3.5 million into the countryside. That's what we used to do to support the countryside across Surrey. And in fact, in Surrey, we look after both access agreements and land, more land than anywhere else in the south of England. We think probably throughout England, because we've got some fantastic land that we look after. Now, here we are now in 2017, we only give 1.6 million to 1.7 million to the countryside. Now, we know it needs more money than that, and that is why we've started to go through a revenue stream to bring money in so we can protect the countryside. There's going to be a number of announcements over the course of the next 24 hours on other consultations and concerns that we will be talking to the public about, where we need to balance the budget. And I'll just spend a few minutes talking about the budget. Up until 2017, so 17-18, over those 7 years, we saved £540 million. We now got to save over the next 3 years approaching 200 million, of which 85 million is in 2019-20. So the real answer is, with increasing demand for children's services and adults, there is not the money to support it. And the truth is, if we were to raise money, we could not protect our beautiful countryside.
Okay, thanks for that, Mike. And some questions are starting to come in now, live,
Yep.
which is great. Let's take the first one from Raina Collier. Hope I pronounced that correctly, Raina. Why can't people not pay by cash if they are going to be forced to pay? They can pay by cash at the machines, can't they?
No.
Oh, they can't? No, right, okay.
No, we looked at this when it went to Select Committee. We did a lot of research on this, and the issue, because they were rural car parks, and with the potential of vandalism, it was felt that we would not put cash in, because we thought that it would not be protected. And to be quite frank, I think that the use of mobile phones and credit cards, the vast majority of people have one or the other. And I do understand it's a fair question, but we had a very difficult decision to make, and I believe it was the right decision that was made.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, we've got a comment, not a question, from Debbie Dart, but as not to people, I don't want people to think that we're screening anything that they're saying, so let's just read them out. Debbie Dart says, there's strong leadership and there's arrogance. It's a fine line, but I remain unconvinced. Sorry. I'm not stupid, and neither are Surrey residents. The arguments and the position are not convincing, I'm afraid. Too little, too late. Perhaps you'd just like to respond to that.
Well, I understand where you're coming from, but I can tell you nobody in Cabinet, nobody in the Select Committee that also supported this wanted to do it. But we have to be realistic with our budget. We are into really difficult situations. You've seen a lot over the course of the last 6 months of many councils in the country struggling to make their budget. And I mean some real serious issues. We all know what happened in Northampton. So we had some difficult decisions to make. And it was leadership that we had to decide to go down this route. But what I don't want people to think is that it's not just about car parking charges. We also bring a lot more money into the countryside with the property that we got, that Surrey Wildlife Trust manage on our behalf. They do some woodland work, which brings money in. We got a sawmill that brings money in. We do weddings that brings money in. We do a whole host of things, bringing small amounts of money in as well, which means we're going to be able to protect the countryside. And the truth is, without this money, we won't be able to protect the countryside. That's the reality, I'm afraid.
Okay, and it might be worth mentioning that there's going to be a series of consultations going live tomorrow. I announced that on my own Facebook page earlier, which might give an indication as to some of the services that the council are looking at. So you know, a lot of residents, and understandably, are looking at this in isolation. As councillors, we can't look at it in isolation. We've got to look at the whole picture. And there's savings that have got to be made across the board.
Yeah, you know, we, as I've said just now, we got to save 86 million by the end of 2019-20. Now, that's a phenomenal amount of money to have to save. And Paul's right, there are going to be a number of consultations which are going to be officially announced tomorrow. And I'm sure, like me, people will not be happy with some of those consultations. But we have to balance the books. That's, unfortunately, the problem we have. We have to balance the books. We have to hit our budget. And it is tough times, no doubt about it.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Now, there's still some more comments coming in, which is fantastic. Thank you, everybody who has just joined us. And for the benefit of the people who are just joining us now, this will be live on the Residents Network over the next hour. but there will be a recording afterwards which you can go back. So if there are any questions that you think have not been answered, if you go back and watch the recording, you'll see those there. And please do put your comments in the comment section there. We will get them answered for you by Mike Goodman. And also please do share this to your own timelines or any local groups that you belong to, so that we can let everybody know what's going on. So quite a few questions coming in now, Mike. Let's have a look. Raina says it's 2018, not 2017. Perhaps you made a mistake in something that you said, or maybe it was the financial year 2017, 2018 you were referring to. I don't know. Sorry, Raina. Perhaps you could clarify. David H says we have had cash payment machines at the National Trust site for years. So he's going back to what you were saying earlier about only accepting electronic payments. But you might want to repeat
what I can say is yes, they have, but I think you find a lot of those have been taken down. Certainly they are going down the route of the credit cards, but we had to make some difficult decisions. And we can talk about the vandalism we've already had since we've had the meters in, and that was where they were vandalising it when there was no money they could get, and that's cost the countryside several £1,000s. So vandalism's happened even though it's not cash that they can take. So I think if it had been cash, we'd have had a lot more problems.
Yeah, okay. Now I'm going to go back to some of the questions we had in advance. Stick around. If you've asked questions in the comments there, we will get to them, I promise. But let's just make sure that everybody has their questions answered. Now, Maureen Pilkington, how many people have responded to the countryside consultation?
820 up to midday today.
Right, okay.
And I would say that's in 2.5 weeks. I want that to go to several thousand. I think this is the one opportunity we have got to get a 25-year strategy for our beautiful countryside. And I urge everybody to make their views known. I want to hear right across Surrey from all the different groups as well. We're having a lot of meetings with various groups, but I want the resident to say, well, actually, this is what I would like to see the country look like. This is how I would protect it. We need people's views, because the intention is once we've got all those in, it ends in December, then we will do a really constructive report that will say this is our countryside over the next 25 years, and we will do certain things in blocks, 1 year, 5 years, etc. So please, I urge everybody to fill it in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have to admit, Mike, it's only in later life, my years, that I've had an interest in the countryside. It's incredible to think that where we live, we've got some of the most incredible countryside and wildlife, some of it unique to Surrey, right on our doorstep.
We have got the most amazing countryside. I have to admit, before I became a councillor and asked to take over the countryside, I did not know much about the countryside. I didn't visit the countryside very much, but I made it my job to really start to understand the importance of the countryside. And we have got some amazing views. We've got some fantastic animals that live here. It's really superb opportunity. We've got some of the nature reserves and triple SIs where we protect the conservation of our countryside. So I think we've got a fantastic countryside, and that's why I'm really, really keen that we protect it, not for me, but for the next generations to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I'm going to ask a question that came in advance from Colin Wilson. Now, quite a controversial character in this context, because there was quite a bit of controversy around a question that he posted on the Residents Network. He posted a question, and in error he posted it as the Surrey Residents Network profile. Colin's not very tech savvy, and a year or so, you neither of you.
No, mine.
But a year or two ago, I gave him access to the Residents Network Facebook page because he's a trustee of the Blackwater Valley Countryside Trust. And he wanted to help.
Some great work.
They do, and he wanted to help promote it. And he asked if there was anything I could do to help him. And I said, well, yeah, sure, I'll give you a user account, editor account on the Residents Network, and that's all he generally uses it for, is to share stuff from their page onto the Residents Network. Well, anyway, he posted a comment, his own views, and I can tell you now, Colin is no conservative, right? But he and I have had many a conversation where he's been very critical of our own MP and conservative policies. He's no Tory. But he posted this on there and all hell broke loose because people thought that either I posted it or it had come from the council or something. And we had to set that straight. Now, so Colin asked this question. With 56% of species declining over 40 years, 15% of species already extinct or threatened, and of the 404 priority species in Surrey, 31% are extinct and 37% are struggling. The UK is one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world. It is time the public accepted nature has as much right to live on Earth as humans, hence charging at sensitive sites is vital. So he agrees with the charging. Do you agree with what he's just said?
Yeah, I think that the people who don't get the credit, the Surrey Wildlife Trust, they do a phenomenal job. And you've only got to talk to a guy called James Adler who looks after much of the countryside. His knowledge of the countryside is superb. And they have, over the time, they've had the countryside since 2002, I think it is. There are many species that they've brought back because they're doing a lot. I was up on Wisley the other day where they bring back the sand lizard, and we've now got them there that weren't there before. So we're bringing them into Surrey, but we then need to make sure they stay there and they increase the population. Yeah. It is really vital because I'll tell you why. If we don't protect these species and we don't protect the land, they won't be there for the next generation. And I think it's vital.
Okay, thank you for that. And thank you, Colin. Now, let's have a look here. Rainer, another question from Rainer. Was the money borrowed to set up the charging system?
Yes.
You mentioned that.
But basically we borrowed 330,000, 4% interest, which will be paid back over the loan of that loan, and that capital is put the meters in, the signage in, and a number of other things that was necessary, the project management fee as well. So that's what we used it for. It's to set it all up. And without that loan, we couldn't have put it in. And then, you see, we wouldn't be then getting the revenue above the loan that's needed to pay off each year. So I think that's an important point to say.
Okay, now Stefan Kenson. And he and I have had many a discussion on my own Facebook page, and Stefan is the page owner of Camberley Chat.
Yep.
Very popular local Facebook group, 20-odd thousand, I think. It might even be 30-odd thousand people follow that now. It's a viper's nest sometimes, but generally a good platform for people to converse. And he wants to know, and I think it's a very good question. There is a petition with over 9,000 signatures asking that these charges not be introduced at Newlands Corner. Will this be ignored?
Well, look, let's be frank about it. They're already in at Newlands Corner. They've already been put in to the Surrey countryside, and we have borrowed the money to put it in, and they're operating. So there is no intention to review that. People I know have strong views both ways on it. You've heard some of the positive things tonight, but we understand that not everybody's going to agree. But I will always go back to the fact we need to protect the countryside, and I need revenue to protect the countryside, and this is a way. And people that use the countryside then surely it's right they should pay. And I know some people don't know, but several people said recently about the permit. There's been a permit in situ now since we started. It's £60 a year, so that's about 16p a day if you're a dog owner to visit there. And I don't think that's too much money to spend. And I know some people will now tell me that's a lot of money, but I think as a permit for a year, that's really good value for money.
Okay, now I'm just checking because I've got to put a notification here from the Save Newlands Corner Facebook page, and one of the contributors there posted a link to their petition.
Yep.
I don't think he realised that it's not going actually on the live stream, so I'm just going to post that in the comments there. A link to the petition if anybody wants to.
Yeah, but what I'm confused, Paul, you're saying about stopping Newlands Corner car parks. That there was a petition some time ago.
Yes, it was, wasn't it?
So that is spent. I apologise, I thought we were talking about the petition I read recently where people are trying to stop the car parking charges.
Right.
And that's what I was answering.
Okay, lovely. Okay, no worries, thanks for clearing that up. So let's have a look at some of the other questions. Mark Power just reiterating what Stefan has said. 9,000 people made their views known, Mike, but you've ignored that. Okay.
But can I just clarify that? I understand when people say we've ignored it. We didn't ignore it, we listened, we did look at those, but we had to make some difficult decisions.
Yeah.
And that is the issue that we're faced. We had some really difficult, as we are going to with the other consultations that will come out tomorrow, and I'm sure there'll be equally as much concern about those.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the thing is that I'm sure as councillors we're going to get a lot of people communicating with us about some of the other things like children's centres, libraries, a whole host of things.
Absolutely.
And they feel just as strongly about those things as some of the people feel about this.
And I understand people want to protect the countryside, and my view is what we're trying to do is protect the countryside by bringing some revenue in to do it. If someone said to me the other week, what would have happened if you hadn't have got this revenue in that you already got over the last few years? Well, the answer is we'd have said to Surrey One Trust, you're going to have to cut some of the services.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't be able to protect the land and the landscape that we can. And I think that's an important point to make.
Okay, good enough. Rainer again. Rainer, you're getting the lion's share of the questions here, but anyway, go on. I have sadly not visited Newlands since the charges. It has put me off that you can't pay by cash, and it sounds like people are being given fines before they've had a chance to buy a ticket. Actually, I saw some comments about that recently. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, look, it's really difficult to talk about individual cases, and I will be very mindful not to. All I would say to you is that the district enforcement people do follow proper guidelines, and people are allowed a certain amount of time before they've got to put a ticket on. And the cases that have come to me, I have had checked. So it is not as draconian as people are making out, but I understand people concerned when they have been ticketed. But all I would say to people is when you get there is to put a ticket on.
Yeah, okay. Toby asks two questions. One, is this a Q&A session or a PR exercise? I'll let you decide, Toby, because whatever we say you're not going to be happy with.
Well,
so
let me try to answer that. Look, people have consistently asked me questions on Facebook, and I've always tried to answer them. A lot of people would say to me, enough's enough, there's a Q&A on Surrey County Council, which there is a good Q&A on there, which answers many of the questions.
That's a written one, isn't it?
Yeah, a written one.
Let me put the link in for that, actually.
But for me, I've been taking an awful lot of negative, and I thought, I said to Paul one day, look, let's just let people ask me questions. So all I can say to you is that I'm trying to answer those questions as honestly and truthfully as I can, because that's my job as a politician. And all I would say to you is that if you feel it's a PR exercise, I'm sorry, that's not what it is. It's about trying to help people understand and answer all their questions that they're putting. This is not staged, as Paul said in the beginning.
No, well, before we went live, I said to Mike, I'm not filtering any questions. People can ask whatever they want, and that's what we're doing. But as for whether you think it's a PR exercise, that's for you to decide.
And his second question?
His second question, which is actually a good question, if I can find it, hang on a minute. What percent, and I think you might have alluded to this already, but let's go back to it. What percentage of the car parking charges will go in the direct costs of running and managing the car parks?
Well, look, if you go onto the website, and I can't remember the precise figures at the moment, but what the investment to what goes in each year in terms of revenue, we will pay back the loan return within, I think, 2.6 years. So that's pretty good return. What I can say is, since the Cabinet agreed and the investment panel agreed the investment, we've looked at some of those costs and we've reduced some of those costs. So what I would be saying is, once we've had a good period of time, perhaps another 6 to 9 months of these operating, I'm quite happy to publish all the figures of exactly what money we've got in and exactly what money we have spent, because I think residents have a right to know that. But it's no good me doing that at the moment. It needs a period of time, because we've still got two car parks, Whittam and Saltbox, have still not got charging in because of a problem with the link with 4G. And also we've got a number of car parks or a number of meters that are not currently working. So we need a period of time where we get no vandalism and we can then judge exactly what the total net revenue is going to be. But I will share that once we've had a longer period of time of it operating.
Okay, so Stefan and Raina both said, so yes, they will be ignored. That's the petition. We don't need to go back over that again, because you've covered that. Raina again, it's not bringing revenue in if you are having to pay off a massive loan first.
Well, no. Look, each year, the way it works is the total money coming in each year will still give money to the countryside each year after it's paid off the loan. That's the fact. So therefore, we're only going to have perhaps 7 months of this year, but we will still be contributing money in the first 7 months to the countryside after paying off the loan.
Right, okay, and again, in terms of the petition, I think John Capel is saying, despite the fact that it's very unpopular, you've covered that. I've put in a link in the comments, by the way, for the countryside, Surrey County Council Q&A. So that's in the comments there if people want to see that. Okay, Yulia McFulia. Okay, is that a real name, Yulia?
No.
If it is, I love it. Talking about services to the landscapes, why are Surrey County Council and SHBC cracking down on private properties, trees, bushes hanging over roads, but they are not trimming back the landowners' overhanging trees? Example, A322, Central Reservation, Bagshot towards Bracknell. Look, Yulia, perfectly valid question, but not related to this. But I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll come back to that for you and answer that after we've stopped the live stream. I'll get that answer for you.
Because we can get, Paul, SHBC or SCC, because it depends who the landowner is. But sometimes a landowner is not a council, it is a private land, and that's where you get difficulties, or we have to go round as SCC telling the landowner, look, you need to cut back your trees. But it's a valid point, and we do get problems with them. So if we know the details between us, Paul, we can deal with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, let me go back to one of the questions that was asked ahead of the screen. Sally Kipping again. How are you responding to the levels of resistance to this tax on local users?
Well, all I can say and repeat that the reason we're doing this is to protect the countryside, so therefore we've got revenue coming in. We understand, and I have said already, that some people don't like it, but we have a choice. We either protect the countryside or we don't protect it. And my view is I want to protect the countryside for my children, my children's children, to enjoy it. Let's be frank about this. This country has not protected its countryside well over the last decade, last 20, 30 years. And I go back to what Michael Gove said in his environmental study, 25-year study, is that he wants this government to leave the countryside in a better condition than when we took it over, or this generation. And I think that's really where I come from. Without this money, we cannot do it. That's the simple thing.
Yeah, okay.
A simple answer.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Let's have a look. There's a lot of thumbs up type comments. Let's have a look. Okay. Peter Harrison, you may have just joined, but Peter wants to know, why do you need the revenue? What is it being used for and why?
Right, okay, it was a very, very good question. When we first started talking about potentially charging car park charges, one of the things I was absolutely adamant on was that all the money, net money, would go back into the countryside. To me, that was a starting point. And it took a lot of time talking to legal and the service to convince them that's the right thing to do. So all the money goes into the countryside, and we will spend that money, or SWT will spend it, on the countryside. But that's why, over the next few years, we want to know what the people of Surrey see as the priorities in protecting the countryside, what really matters to them. And so therefore that will also get a priority. But we also have some legal things that we need to do with the conservation, the SSIs, etc., that we need to spend money on. So therefore, we will spend that money on the countryside with SWT, and so none of that money will come to Surrey. None of the car park money comes to Surrey. It all goes to SWT.
Okay. Toby DK again. But you must surely have prepared a business plan for this with the projected revenues before embarking on this scheme and the borrowing money to set it up.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, Peter Harrison wants to know, what does protect the countryside actually mean?
Well, ensuring that access is there. It's ensuring that we look after things like the animals, the grass lizards. It's protecting the fauna. It's looking at improving the heathland, and a lot of people
biodiversity.
Because that's really important.
Conservation.
So, yeah, it's a whole thing of the whole countryside.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Hope that answers that, Peter. But if you want more detailed response to that, actually we can put you in touch with people at the Surrey Wildlife Trust who will tell you exactly what it is that they do. They hold lots of phenomenal events that you can go along that are really fun and interesting.
And I think that's a really good point, Paul, because I was with SWT today. We were talking about the 3-year business plan, and one thing we talked about was improving the education of people's knowledge of the countryside. And many of you may or may not know that 2019 is a year of education of the countryside. That doesn't stop with children. That's also for adults, and what I'm encouraging them to do is to do more events to encourage more adults to go into the countryside. And I think that is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm trying my best to, sometimes she's not that interested, but trying to get my daughter interested in these sorts of things. I take her up to Newlands, tree climbing and nature watching all the time.
The countryside is great for that.
Yeah, and we're so lucky to have
we have in
just some of the most amazing countryside in the world right here on our doorstep. So a couple more questions that were asked in advance, and could I encourage you, because we've got about 20 minutes left, so if you've got any other questions, put them in the comments there. We really would love to answer them for you, or certainly Mike would. So let's have a look. Another one from Sally Kipping, and actually this is a question that I've seen asked quite a lot, which is, what has been the impact on the local cafe? I think she means at Newlands Corner.
Well, I honestly haven't been, I'm not close enough to know precisely. I've read what the press has said. My understanding is it is not as bad as what people have said, but I haven't got any data, true data, because it's not part of our responsibility. That's the Albury estate that employ them, not us. So I couldn't tell you precisely.
So the concession
is
deals
with
with the Albury estate,
yeah, not
with Surrey
with us,
County
yeah.
Council.
So he probably wouldn't share that with us, but he may well with the Albury estate.
Got it. Okay. So Claire Sayers wants to know: is there any plans to develop on Chobham Common? I think somebody asked this earlier. Was it John?
No.
The answer is no.
No. You know, as much as I think that
I think they'd have a job.
I think they would leach that to try to build on common land like Chobham.
Well, isn't it a special protection area?
Large parts of it is absolutely.
Right.
It just would not. It just would not
get free planning.
No.
Triple SI, special protection area.
We would not.
Plus the riots that would.
Just no way will we be building on Chobham Common.
Right. Okay. Okay. Question again in advance. How can we be sure that the money raised will be spent on the countryside?
Well, I think I partly answered that before. The fact is, it is in the cabinet paper that's very clear that money goes to Surrey Wildlife Trust to use within the countryside, and we never see that money because all the credit cards and Ringo and permanent money all goes to Surrey Wildlife Trust. Yes, they will at the end give us an account of how that money, what the net money is in, but it will all go to them. And I wouldn't publicly, and voted in cabinet for this, then to find that the money's not gone there. So you can rest assured it will go to Surrey Wildlife Trust for the countryside.
Okay, thanks for that, Mike. Got some more questions coming in live. Toby wants to have an update on the recent incident at Newlands Corner where the ticket machines were not working, but despite that the warden was issuing parking fines.
Well, right, look, first of all, the ticket machines weren't working because twice in the matter of weeks somebody decided to vandalise the meters. And so therefore the credit cards were not working. That's what's caused some of the people's issue. And we're still saying you will pay by phone, and that's correct. But if people had to vandalise those, there would not be a problem. And I repeat, all that money that's been caused by damage to those will have to come out of the profit, if you like, or the net revenue for the countryside estate. But as for the question of the district enforcement, there's been one issue to mind, maybe two, where those have been dealt with individually, and there's always two sides to the story.
There is, and surely there's an appeals process as well.
Correct, absolutely.
So, if there was a genuine anomaly somewhere, I'm sure that
but
would be taken into consideration.
The one case that came to me was dealt with, and we were given a report.
Okay, thank you for that, Mike. Matthew Richardson says, the countryside is great indeed. It does not require activity parks and all the nonsense to encourage kids to partake in it. I think he's going back to the original proposals to put in a play trail and access and other equipment.
Yeah, I'm not really going to talk about that today too much.
Well, that's been stopped.
That in the moment has been stopped. I still believe it would have been fantastic for children, and not just children, but adults with dementia particularly. There was a brilliant opportunity. I think people do need to be encouraged to go to the countryside, and I think we do need ways in which to get them into the countryside. And there are different ways different people do it, but I thought that what we were going to do at Newlands Corner could really work to encourage people to go there. But everybody must make their own decision on whether or not they bring the children into the countryside. But I think when they do, children will love it.
Good enough. Okay, one from... Oh, hello, James. Hello, thank you for joining us. Andrew Wilgross. Now, we know Andrew. He's been very rude to us recently on Facebook. Called us scumbags, I think. Tory scumbags also.
Yeah, amongst other things.
Other things. Classy fella, very classy. But anyway, I'll read you a question out. Hi, Mike and Paul. He's being all nice and polite now.
Very nice. Thank you.
Hi, Mike and Paul. He's obviously got an audience, so he don't want to show his true colours. But anyway, can you confirm the percentage of the income from Newlands Corner that will go to the Albury estate after paying for the installation costs and the cut for the parking enforcement company? How much per annum are you expecting to have left to spend on the maintenance of Newlands Corner? fair question.
Well, first of all, let me answer the district enforcement. District enforcement doesn't cost the element of enforcement costs us nothing. That I have said before. As for the Albury Estate and the deal we've got with the Albury Estate, that is between Surrey County Council and the Albury Estate, and that is confidential. We will, in time, once the Newlands Corner settle down, we will, within the business plan, say what money we've actually achieved over the years with Newlands Corner in terms of profitability. But I can assure you there will be money, and there is money, that will go into the maintenance. But the other thing I'd say to you is, or what people may not know, that part of the deal with Albury Estate, and remember it's the Albury Estate land, is that we're having a management plan with them, which I'm actually looking at tomorrow or Thursday, where we are going to look after part of the land as part of the discussions with Albury. So some of the money will go to actually improve the land, the woodlands, etc. So there is a plan to do that, and that we will deliver for the Albury Estate as part of the charges.
Okay, good enough. Okay, so David HC says, it seems the law and bad PR is the reason why Mike is not wanting to build on the common as opposed to the benefits to the UK and Europe of the countryside that Surrey County Council should be trying to protect. Mike has never expressed any desire to do that to me, and I can tell you now.
No way.
No one wants to build on there.
I don't think we want to ever build on common. Let's put that to bed now once and for all, that there is no intention at all whilst I'm doing this job.
Yeah.
But I don't think Surrey County Council would want to do that. And I don't think in law they would be able to do it. So I think it's a red herring that is somebody...
Yeah, I don't know where that's come from.
That is not going to happen.
Right, it's not happening. So, what we got here? Toby, okay. He wants to know how you feel about the introduction of these hugely unpopular charges when you see pictures of empty car parks on social media.
Well, it
must be a bit disheartening, Mark.
Look,
Mark.
I can take a picture, you can take a picture, we all can take pictures, but those pictures do paint a bad story, no doubt about it. But this is not just about what's happening now, it's what's going to happen over the course of time. And when people tell me that there's no one in Chobham Common, let me tell you that's not true. I did post this this week, somebody rang me up to tell me that he'd been on Chobham Common and there were 27 paid people there. So there may be some pictures being taken at odd times, and I can accept in some of the car parks, the numbers were down in the initial time, but there's others that were up. So I think let's give it time, but when people blatantly are trying to encourage people not to go into the countryside, then some people may well take notice of that, but I think long term we will find that people will return to the car parks to enjoy the beautiful countryside.
Okay, I'm just looking at the time. We've got 12 minutes left. I'm going to read out these live ones now.
Yep.
And then I'll go to make sure that we get all the ones we had in previously answered. So Raina says, that's a bit petulant. She's talking to me now. That's a bit petulant and unnecessary. Doesn't make you look particularly mature, to be honest. He asked the question politely, so professional thing to do is just to answer it. Well, Raina, yeah, you could say that, but I'm only human too, and I have to say that Andrew Wilgross has been particularly unnecessarily rude towards Mike and I on social media, which is also unnecessary, and I may well be a councillor. I can't speak for Mike, but I may well be a councillor, but I'm also human, and I don't have to accept that kind of behaviour towards me. Mike might want to accept it, I don't have to, but anyway. Lynn Atkins says hello. Hello, Lynn. And speaking of Andrew Wilgross, he says the confidentiality thing is not acceptable. You're taking money off the public. Surely the public should be informed where this money is going.
Well, look, the money is going to the countryside. When we have had a period of time where the car park charges have been in, then we will ensure that people are fully aware of money in to money that's going out. But to try to put now a steer on how many weeks we've had the car park charges, so this is how much we've got in, this is how much we've spent out, would be meaningless. We need a period of time first before we can do it. Let's remember, this year you've had the hottest summer for a long time. A lot of people have gone away from the countryside and gone to beaches, and I know that National Trust are finding the same. We've had car parks closed because of travelling incursions, and that is a serious issue to us. We've had a lot of vandalism, so therefore we've had to we haven't had the meters going in a number of places, so there have been a lot of things against us. All I would say to you, and I'm going to repeat, the only reason we're bringing the charges in is to protect and improve our wonderful countryside. And without these charges, that makes it very challenging to do. Yeah. And I want to protect it for future generations.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Mike. We're going to switch now to the questions we had in advance. Right. A few more live ones have come in, which we will try and answer, but we're going to answer these advanced ones first, and then we'll come back to the live ones if there's time. So, Sally, what is your detailed response to the article in the Surrey Advertiser?
Which?
There's been several, hasn't there?
Well, that's
several
right. Which
Sally, if you're watching live, will you just say which one you're actually referring to?
If we're talking about the car park charges, I think that we made our position known on that we will be continuing to charge.
Maybe she's talking about the petition.
Well, that's right. Petition. There's a petition that Surrey Advertiser started, and we have deliberately not gone to the Surrey Advertiser and said anything, because my view is that's for them to print what they wish. They've never asked us for a comment, and I would say tonight again that these charges are necessary to protect the countryside.
Fair enough. Peter Norman wants to know if the car park charges had not been introduced, what would happen to the countryside?
Well, that is an excellent comment, and I think that I've tried to answer that early on with the previous question, that if we hadn't had the car park charges and if we hadn't had the revenue, we would be something like 400,000 or thereabouts short. That would have meant we could not protect the countryside, and some of the work that Surrey Wildlife Trust do on our behalf, and they work really hard, we've got some really good work that's done, would not be done. And then what will eventually happen is access to the countryside would be an issue.
Okay.
So,
yeah, okay. And I think people don't realise that the countryside doesn't look after itself, especially with all the urban sprawl around that surrounds it.
Well, I think I said earlier, we've got more land we look after than any other council in the south of England, probably in the UK. It costs us something in the order of 1.6 million. Yeah. Now, if we can get revenue, commercial revenue in terms of things that brings in money, then we can continue to put that money into the countryside to protect it.
Okay, good enough. Are there any other revenue streams?
Lots of revenue streams, and I think I might have covered these. We do weddings, we do corporate days, we do education, we do a wood business, we've got a sawmill, car park charges, we do camping, we do Dad's Day weekends. So there's a lot of things. And to be quite frank, we need to think of more ways in which we can use the countryside in a way in which educates people but also brings in revenue, because if we can educate people more about the countryside, more people are going to use it and enjoy our wonderful countryside.
One thing you didn't touch on actually in that list of other revenue streams is that Surrey is actually one of the biggest film sets in the world.
Oh yeah, we do filming as well, and we do a lot of filming. And that's increased enormously. The other thing I did...
There's been some major blockbusters filmed.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Chop and Common.
Yeah, Chop and Common particularly has a lot of filming. Yeah. And the other thing I may have mentioned before, but I'll repeat it, is the Surrey Wildlife Trust manage our properties, like Bucket's Farm. They manage that, so therefore that makes a profit, so that goes into the countryside. All the money we get from all the properties in the countryside goes in to improve the countryside.
Okay, good enough. I'm going to try to ask you to answer these relatively quickly, because let's try and keep it to the hour. We've got another 6 minutes.
Right.
Sally, and there's a few live ones as well. Yeah. Sally Kipping again, this is her final question. Please comment on whether This is specifically about penalising dog owners, and if so, why is this required, and what data do you have to support it?
Nothing about dog owners at all. This is about people that use the countryside, drive to the countryside. I think I'm right in saying that 33% of the people that go into the countryside that filled out the consultation are dog owners. So there's, by default, there's 67% that are not dog owners. So there was no intention of penalising dog owners.
I think that question may have, I might be wrong, I think that question may have derived from that error that Colin when he posted that thing on the Residents Network. I might be wrong. Okay, so now we're going to try and answer. There's a load of sod's law, a load of questions have come in right at the end. I'll tell you what, don't mind going over a little bit if you're all right with that, Mike. Carry on, because we really do want to get everyone's questions answered. Nick Simon. I think did we answer that? How's the car park charges going? Empty car parks won't pay back the money you borrowed on the machines. No, we didn't answer that.
No, look, we've got a budget for the first year, and then we've got it for the next 15 years. And some of the car park numbers were down, some were actually slightly above our budget. I think there's a lot been made of empty car parks. I go to Newlands Corner quite frequent, I go to Chobham, and I gave the example that somebody told me of Chobham the other day. So look, it's going to take time. I do not believe it's a big issue long term, because I think people will come back to the countryside. And in fact, we will still meet our budget for this year, or very near, if not exceed it, on the money that comes in to the money that would go out. So the net revenue for the countryside, remembering it's only going to be sort of 6 or 7 months, and remembering also we've still got 2 car parks that have not got charges in Whitmore and Saltbox.
Okay, thanks for that. Philip John Passy says, you have built on the common, the land where the studios are, where common land taken by the army and meant to be given back. And any way are you paying to go on common land? Thought that was what our taxes pay for. I'm not sure what.
Well, I don't know about the building, but all I can say is common land is still part of Surrey County Council only, and they're responsible for maintaining it.
Yeah.
So therefore it costs money to maintain it. And with the Crow Act, we are allowed now that people are allowed access onto the countryside, yes, we are allowed to charge in car parks, and that is the law that we can do that.
Okay, now just put a comment in to say no more questions from this point, please. We'll get all the ones answered that have come in, and then we'll end the live stream. It's funny how they all come in right at the last minute. Now, James Burton says, couldn't people just park elsewhere and walk in for free to Newlands Corner to avoid these parking charges? I did hear apparently the cafe hasn't seen as many visitors since the parking charges have been put in place. Now, if this is my mate James Burton, who is one of my constituents and lives in Mitchett, James, not everyone's as fit as you are. He's right into his mountain biking.
Well, look, if people can park somewhere else, free and walk in, that is their decision. I've covered off the car park for the cafe owner, but I've really got nothing else to add.
Yeah, and as far as parking outside, and it's something we did discuss at Scrutiny Committee ahead of these charges, and people still have to park legally. Yeah,
and I think we put a lot of work in after scrutiny to say where would the potential displacement be, which would cause danger. So if there was danger, we then actually took appropriate action. But actually, I get a report frequently, and I think it's just one area at the moment that may be causing a problem in Norbury. But generally speaking, there's not been a displacement problem that's come to our attention. Now, if residents believe there is a displacement problem, then I'm not been made aware of it.
Okay. Thanks for that, James. And Conquest. What about alternative green space options with free parking, such as those listed on tbhpartnership.org.uk? I assume that's the Thames Heath Basin, is it? TBH? I don't know. Such as Chobham Water Meadows, Heather Farm, Esher Hill, Ottershaw Chase and Timber Hill, Woodham Common, etc., etc. Could these be an alternative option to those residents to use instead of paying for the charges?
Well,
That's
sure,
up
it's
to them,
down
isn't
to
it?
the residents, yeah.
It really is down to them, isn't it? And there are, she's right, there are some
Yeah,
really
there are,
amazing places
yeah,
still
there are,
available
yeah.
for people. So the argument that, you know, we're disadvantaging people who can't afford.
There are 30 car parks in Surrey countryside, of which only 15 or 16 now are charged. So there are car parks
Plenty of others, and some amazing nature reserves.
Absolutely right.
Okay, so, but thanks for that, Anne. Nick Simon, okay, 400k short, 400,000 short. You borrowed 300,000 to install the machines, so that means you could be now 700,000 short.
I'm not sure where he's getting the 400. I tried to repeat if I didn't make it clear. We've borrowed, if you like, 342,000, I think it is, and we will pay that back over 15 years. And that will be at 4%, and we will pay that back, and that's in the business plan. So we will be paying the first instalment come April this year, and we will pay it every year after that until the loan is paid off.
Okay, thank you. So what's the next one? All you have managed to do is drive people to areas which don't have parking charges. I have seen a lot more footfall in areas where charges aren't in place.
Well, I think we covered that.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
I'm not sure I can add anything else to that.
Okay, Victoria Wheeler, Councillor Victoria Wheeler. It would appear you take from the common, but what is your man-agent plan to return to Heathland? I'm not actually sure what that means.
Well, I think I do. What I would say is that is why we are doing a consultation on the countryside. The plan is to listen to the public on what they want the common to look like, what they want Norby to look like and the rest of the countryside, and then we will then put that through with the plan. I can also say that I've been in consultation, and so SWT with both Chobham Preservation Society and Chobham Society to work with them to make sure we do deliver some of the things that people want. And there are always different opinions about what things should look like. And the beauty of this consultation is that we can hear what the people actually want. And that is what I'm looking forward to looking at when it's finished in early December.
Okay, thanks for that, Mike. Tanya de Mauer Thompson. Hope I pronounced your name right, Tanya. Apologies if I haven't. Under Section 38 of the Commons Act 2006, you need consent to carry out any restricted works on land registered as common land under the Commons Registration Act 1965. Restricted works are any that prevent or impede access to over the land.
Now, I understand where Tanya's coming from, but what I can say, Tanya, is that when we put the car parking charges in, we got that checked out to make sure we didn't have an issue. As you know, in Newlands Corner, we did get, we did speak and we did get permission for the charges there, but for the countryside estate, the decision was taken quite rightly that we do not have to get Commons consent.
Okay. Good enough. Claire, where are these activities advertised? As I never see them. I think she's talking about, you know, like the events.
Well, it's a good point, because that's exactly what we said today with SWT. We need to be much better together to promote these events, and it's a really good point, and we will take that away. And I know SWT will be listening to this, I'm sure, that I think we need to do much more to generate interest in these, and all we do is to market it better, and I think you're right, Paul.
Yeah.
Very good question.
But in the meantime, until we all get our act together, if you go to the Surrey Wildlife Trust website, that's a good place to have a look at it, and they do some really fantastic events, especially if you've the education centre there.
And you know, I'd encourage everybody to do that, because SWT do some brilliant things, and it gives you the opportunity to consider being a member there as well. And they are a fantastic body. They do some great work for us right across Surrey. So please go onto the website. Yeah, and they're also on Facebook. So if you search the Surrey Wildlife Trust on Facebook, Instagram, Surrey Wildlife Trust,
and Twitter. So they're on all the social media networks and put some really good stuff out. So, okay, we're drawing to a close now. A couple more questions and then we're going to wrap it up. So, maybe you should have advertised this so people could be involved. Tim, we did advertise this. It's on everywhere. We put it on the Save Newlands Corner Facebook group, Chogham Society, Residents Network, our own pages, the County Council Conservative group page. It's been shared everywhere, and actually we've not done bad. It's had quite a good reach. Stefan, Tim, to be frank, to Paul, he did post it on Camberley Chat.
Thank you.
There you go. Thank you, Stefan. Okay, to prove the point for me. Thank you, Stefan, for that. Nick Simon, isn't the upkeep of the countryside covered under the Parks and Open Spaces section of our council tax? Very good question.
Well, no. We have a budget, and that budget comes from our total council tax revenue that we have in.
And I would just like to add to that, if I may, Mike, that a lot of the services that the council provide are discretionary services. They're not, some services like adult social care are statutory services, but when it comes to other services, it's discretionary. The council are not legally obligated to provide.
You made a really good point, and many residents and people that are tuned into this will know the real pressures of adult social care and children and disabilities. That takes a real large chunk of the council money, but we still give over 1.6 million to the countryside, but we don't need to do that. We could cut that in half. We could reduce it even more. But if we do that without getting some revenue coming in, we can't maintain the countryside, and that's the challenge for us.
Okay, thank you. Right, we're drawing to a close. There's a few more come in. Hang on. Victoria Wheeler says, you've chosen one positive quote and ignored 10 that show the car parks are empty. Well, there are plenty of posts on social media that show they're empty. Okay, let's have a look. Tim Brewster says, first I've seen it. I'm not sure what he's referring to there. I did say no more questions at that point, but there's a couple more. Well, no, there's far too many. I'll tell you what we'll do. I think we will draw it to a close now, because a lot of these are questions we've already answered. If you go back and watch the recording, those questions have been answered there. But also, if there is anything in these comments that haven't been answered, we will go back and answer them for you within 24 hours. Mike, is that okay?
Absolutely. You know, we want to be as open, as transparent as we can, and we want to answer people's questions. And I hope now, after this session, we can bring it to a close. But if there are questions that you've not asked, and tomorrow, the next day, there are fresh questions that's not on the Q&A, you can send it to me, and I'll do my best to get answers from the service within the next few days.
Okay, and also, if you do a search on Councillor Mike Goodman on Facebook, you'll find his page there, his Facebook page, where I'm sure if you don't mind me saying, Mike, sometimes you're a little bit too keen to answer some questions. You mustn't have a private life.
No, that's true. But don't be a councillor if you want a private life.
No, absolutely true. But thank you so much for agreeing to do this.
No, thank you for the residents.
Every question we have read out as they were posted. So we've not.
Can I just finish, Paul, by saying, look, first of all, thank you all who have taken part with the questions, and for those who have just listened in. This was not a difficult decision to make. It really wasn't. But it was felt at the end of the day, the way we could protect for future generations was to charge for car parking charges. And I believe, and I still believe it's the right decision. I do believe in time people will return more and more to the countryside, because I understand some people believe they're not in the countryside. I actually believe it's not as bad as perhaps some people think. Certainly our figures don't show that. But please, you know, it is not easy. And over the next couple of days, you're going to see a number of other consultations that have a lot more impact on people than charging car park charges, which all go in to maintaining and improving the countryside. Thank you.
Okay, Mike Goodman, thank you very much. And I just want to add to that any other consultation stuff and large public discussion on social media about the consultations, I will speak to the cabinet members responsible and see if they would agree. I can't see any reason why they wouldn't to do these Q&As. I think it's a great way of getting.
Well, my service is going to be the service at the forefront of these. So yeah, I will do this as the two consultations.
CRCs is one of them, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you're happy to do one on that?
Yep.
Okay, great. Well, Mike Goodman, thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.